Hi, I'm Dale Wilson. I am here to talk about CSS selector specificity. Is there any police fans here of the band? Yeah, all right, cool. So when this topic first came about, it put the song Synchronicity in my head by the Police. And I've been singing specificity for weeks. When I was thinking of a title for this chat, I went to the lyrics of that song and found the line, "A Shared Romance." I thought it was a very fitting title because to me, there's a lot of commonalities between the cascading waterfall of a CSS style sheet and a relationship. The way that you can set a bunch of stuff at the beginning of a style sheet and you can reuse that, you can manipulate it, you can reuse it, or override it. And yeah, I just thought it was a good title for the chat. And so this is going to be a police-themed talk. So when it comes to CSS selectors, there's 4 different ways you can do it. There's type, class, ID, and inline. I have a handy little weight comparison chart up here. So for type, that is like an HTML element, like a P element or a div or main or whatever. And that is I'm using Sting's face to to demonstrate the weight. So type has a small Sting face. For class, that would be like a div element with the class Roxanne, let's say. That has a slightly larger Sting face. Then for ID, where you would want to style something a little more specific than a class, like a list item or an anchor tag or something like that. That has the weight of a slightly larger Sting head. Then for inline, that is done right in the HTML element tag, and that has the giant Sting head. All right, so I have a P tag up there with Sting is great. Then in the CSS here, I have it selected with the P and the color blue. We look at the weight comparison chart down there, and it has the small Sting head. So you can see to the left of that, Sting is great is blue. The next one down, I have a P tag with the class Sting rules. In the CSS, it is selected with a period and then Sting rules and colored green. You can look in the weight comparison chart, and the class has a slightly larger Sting head, so Sting is great is green. Below that, I have the P tag with the class Sting rules, then the ID King Sting, which is in the CSS selected with a hashtag King Sting, and it's colored yellow. You can see Sting is great is yellow down at the almost at the bottom there, and then P class Sting rules ID King Sting, but then I use the inline CSS selector to color it red, and you can see down there in the weight comparison it does have the giant Sting head. So Sting stinks is colored red. Okay, so here I have a body class named Sting, main class plays, div class base, P class good, and I wrote Stang. And then below that would be body class named Sting, main class plays, div class base, P class good, but also the ID fields of gold, and I wrote Stung. So you can see in this one here, on the CSS, that Stang is selected with the selector, the type selector P, then the class selectors Sting plays base good, and that's colored brown. which looks very red to me. And then stung up at the top there is the type selector P, then class selectors sting plays base good. But the ID selector, fields of gold, colored gold. So you can see stung is gold down at the bottom there. This is to sort of demonstrate that it doesn't matter how many sting heads you have of varying sizes or weights. It's always the biggest. Even if you have a million sting heads, if you have one sting head that is bigger, that is that's the sting head. That's the style that would be displayed. Okay. Here I have 5 P elements, all of them saying the police, and all of them with the class name red. In the CSS, beside it, I have class name class name red, colored red, class name red, colored white, class name red, colored green, and class name red, colored blue. This is to show that if you have a bunch of elements that all have the same weight, that all have the same selector weight, then it would be the last one, the one at the bottom, closest to the bottom, I guess, of the CSS style sheet that would be displayed. Okay, pseudo classes. There's a bunch of pseudo classes. I just picked a few here for fun. Pseudo classes would be selected with a colon and then the name of the pseudo class. So for hover, I have a bunch of spinning sting heads here, and then as you hover over them, they are pulsing sting heads. For visited, you can barely see it there, but it says if I'm green, I've been visited. So right now it's purple. When I hover on it, it's blue, and then I click it, and it's still purple. Okay, well, pretend that turned green. Great. Man. Anyway, all right. So for focus, down at the bottom, that would be for like an input field or something like that. And you can click on it. Mine got bigger and turned blue. Great, so I'm going to put a name in there to go to the next page. I'm going to choose Sting. Okay. With this page, what I wanted to do was write out all the lyrics to Synchronicity. Each verse and chorus is using a different HTML element, and I wanted to use CSS to select them and style them so they all pretty much look the same. Okay, so I started with the text color bisque and font size 25. So with verse 1, I used a bunch of span elements with breaks at the end, and I have it selected with the type selector div, type selector span, and I colored them green. Then at the first chorus, I used a unordered list, and each line is a different list item. So I selected the whole div with the type selector div, colored it orange. And then for each line, I selected them with the type selector div, type selector unordered list, type selector list item, and then a child selector, nth child, and even. So this will select each child element that is an even number, counting down starting from the parent element. So it does, that's selected line 2, 4, 6, and 8. Underneath that, I did list item and the child selector first child, so that did line 1. Then below that, I did list item, child selector nth child, 8n minus 1. I don't know what the n stands for. Does anyone? No. Okay. So that is 8 minus 1. It's the answer, I guess, 8 minus 1. So that selected line 7, casually connectable. Then I did list item nth child 963,852,746 minus 963,852,741, which equals 5. So that selected line 5, science insusceptible. Now I was still missing line 3. So up here, I did an ID selector imperceptible. In the CSS, I selected that with the hashtag imperceptible. With all of those top ones selected, I used the list style none, which got rid of the little bullets that would be on the end there. And it was this way a little bit. So I used the margin left minus 3% to kind of bump it back that way. And then, yeah, with imperceptible, I moved it the same distance to slam it back with the other guys, and then used an inline CSS selector to do the list style none to get rid of that last bullet. Verse 2, I used more spans with breaks at the end, and I selected it with the type selector div, and then the child selector nth child number 3, because it was the third div down from the parent element that was the main element. Chorus 2, I used a H1 element with breaks after each line. And then I used, in the CSS, the H1 made the words a little bit bigger than the rest. I think it was like 28 or something like that, 28 or 32. So I did 96%, which made it a little bit smaller, and then the font weight lighter because it was really bold. And then verse 3, I used a bunch of spans again, selected it with the class selector verse 3 and the type selector span, colored them green, and put them in a grid. That's why they look perfect. And then chorus 3, I did P elements. I selected it with the class selector chorus 3 with the less than sign and a star, which selected all the child elements. Just did some margin stuff. And then at the bottom did the class selector chorus 3 with the type selector P and child selector first child, because for some reason this right here was looking really weird. And that fixed it right up. And then the last verse, I used P elements, and I selected it with the class selector verse 4 and the type selector P. I fixed the line height because once I slammed those spinning sting heads for all the O's, the spacing in between each line was really weird. I colored them green and fixed the margin bottom on that first line using the type selector div, the child selector nth child 7 because it was the 7th div from the main element. And then selected the top line with the P and first child and fixed the margin bottom. What happened here, though, is that once I started doing this, I realized that this is literally the first thing that I've ever built by myself, and it was awful. Yeah, thanks. It was very frustrating, lots of cursing and stuff. But this looks great here, and I thought I was going to be, naively thought that I was going to be able to just do a bunch of like screenshots and easily plunk in all those little pictures here that you can see. But man, was I wrong. Yeah, it was rough. So that's why this looks kind of different than the other one. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much. I could do 100 talks on CSS, but I'm not gonna. And yeah, thank you very much. Have a great evening.